Hey, hi everybody. This is Jim Prusak, physical therapist from the Pain PT, and I'm bringing with you today another success story. Which again, I've been dropping a lot of them on you lately because it's so powerful to hear these success stories, and I'm so lucky and fortunate to have Belle here today to share her story. Hi, Belle. How are you doing?
Hi, Jim. I'm good, thank you.
So great to see you, and so thankful that you're willing to come on and share your story. I know sometimes it's hard to do this. We talked off air. It's nervous, right?
Yeah,
But just know it's going to be so helpful for other people to hear your journey and what you went through to get to where you are now. So I'm going to turn it over to you. Maybe you can start wherever you want, but maybe share your history and where you came from, and then we'll just kind of work through to where you are now.
yeah, sure. So I started with the long version of COVID, unfortunately, right at the beginning of the pandemic. So it was March 2020. Um, and I just started with shortness of breath feelings that just became just more and more severe as the days went on. And then also I started to have quite significant heart problems. So I'd be lying down and my heart would just go up to like 160 just with me lying down, which was terrifying. I've never experienced anything like that in my life. So they called an ambulance for me because I was having real trouble breathing, and with my heart things going on as well. And the paramedics came. They checked me over and they thought that there was an issue with my heart. So they took me into hospital. And I think it's just like important to remember the timing of this as well, because, it was right at the start of the pandemic. The hospitals were kind of in chaos. I was put straight into a COVID ward. So I was with a lot of really, really sick, unwell people. And that was terrifying just in and of itself. Um, they checked me over. Um, they said that there was a problem with my heart. They said, I can't remember exactly what it was, but they said something like it was ectopic, something like that. And they said, I remember the nurse saying to me that they would normally refer me to cardiology department, but everything was shut down at that time, so they couldn't do anything, and I just had to be sent home. And the message was very much just wait and see, and if it gets worse, then just call the paramedics again, call an ambulance. And that was quite a scary thing to kind of hear, that yeah, there is a problem with you. It's a problem with your heart. There's something going on, but we can't help you. We need to ship you out. We need to make room for people that are more severe than you.
So
So
no reassurance. They didn't reassure you. They just sent you on your way, left you hanging really.
yeah, yeah. And then went home, and obviously I was terrified. The symptoms just kept getting worse. I was given inhalers to take. They made no difference at all because it really felt like I was having multiple asthma attacks throughout the day. That's the only way I can kind of describe it. It was horrendous. And often I wasn't sleeping through the night because I couldn't breathe. And yeah, it was terrifying. And I was obviously getting no help. There was no support. The GP services, our family, our doctors here, that everything was shut down. So there was nowhere to go, nowhere to be seen. Um, I ended up going into hospital again because obviously things were progressing and just getting worse and nothing was changing. Um, and the same thing happened. They couldn't find necessarily anything wrong. At that point, they didn't find anything wrong with my heart, and I just got sent home again. So
Did
it
you
went
think at
on.
this point you had it was from the COVID at this point? Did you think it was due to that, these symptoms at the
Yeah,
time?
I think I knew. Well, it was like I remember the lockdown got announced, and I remember my children got my obviously my daughter got sent home from nursery straight away. We had to go and get her. It was when everything was like chaos and not anyone knowing what was going on. And she actually had a viral infection at the time. I didn't think it would be COVID, but I think it might have been. And then I got a sore throat, and I got all like the classic symptoms. But for me, it just progressed into the breathing problems, and then my heart, um, and the symptoms just kind of. It was the most bizarre experience I've ever been through in my life. It was like my whole body went just haywire. I then got like digestive issues, like reflux. It felt like gas bubbles were coming up and just got stuck in my chest, and it was I had like things going into my back, and that affected my bowels. So I had problems moving like it was just everything. There was just one thing after another, and it just kept progressing. And I would just remember being in such a state of confusion of what was happening to my body. It was absolutely terrifying.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember all the symptoms you had. And we joked at one point that you were running out of real estate in your body for symptoms.
Yeah.
You
I
had
mean,
so
I
many.
think
I
I
mean,
said
maybe
to,
share
yeah.
some of the other ones you had too. Maybe you'll get to them, I think, as we walk through.
Oh my goodness. I think it's, I remember joking with you, I think it's easier to kind of say what I haven't had rather than what I have had. So I've had like severe head pressure. I've had derealization, depersonalization. I've had blurred vision. I had a lot of stuff going on with my throat. So often it felt like allergic reaction where it felt my throat was closing over. That was a big one for me. That was happening a lot. I had POTS, obviously with the heart stuff. So every time I stood up, my heart rate would go to like 130, 40s, 50. You know, it wasn't normal. And that was terrifying. I had chronic fatigue syndrome. So 4 months into me having the COVID, I developed chronic fatigue, and then post-exertion malaise as well. I remember that when came actually back when I was working with you as like an extinction burst. I remember that quite clearly. But yeah, so every time I tried to walk or go anywhere, I could then just crash for days, if not weeks on end, just feeling incredibly unwell and sick, and like a really heavy malaise feeling. I had GERD, reflux. I had God, what else? Bowel issues. um, yeah.
What about the leg stuff too?
The what? Sorry.
The leg issues in your legs.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
that came a little bit later on, actually, when I was working with you through that point. So I don't know if I want to sort of.
Yeah, let's just go chronologically because
Yeah,
bring
okay.
people through
So
the story
yeah,
because it's a really
so
good story. Yeah.
I was pretty much bedbound for around about 9-10 months, and I started to improve a little bit. I was on a long COVID support group, and I could see that some people were getting better. And I think that gave me hope that it was possible for me. And I think I was so determined as well to get better, but there was lots of ups and downs, lots of crashes, but I was see there was a sort of a general trajectory towards me making some improvements. So after about a year, I started to try and go back to work. So this was like the beginning of 2021. And I was going back to a really stressful job that probably wasn't in hindsight right for me at the time, and I didn't really want to go back to. And then I developed chronic back pain and chronic neck pain within 4 days of each other. So that kind of took over from a lot of the COVID symptoms, the sort of the more usual ones that I had. It then was all about the back pain and the neck pain that I suddenly developed out of nowhere.
So it switched over what we would call the symptom imperative. It moved locations in your body, move
Know
symptoms.
a lot about the symptom imperative.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So then once I developed the back pain and the neck pain, I just was thinking to myself, this just doesn't make sense. Like I really started to get curious about what the hell was going on in my body. It was so severe, so random and all over the place. And at that point, I actually found Alan Gordon's podcast, Tell Me About Your Pain. And my back pain and neck pain went down by about 80% after listening to that podcast. And I remember thinking, okay, like there's something in this. And I kind of, my belief in the mind-body connection and what that was all about, I sort of educating myself then about it and sort of finding out more about it. And I just at that point started to wonder if this long COVID stuff was TMS as well. And there wasn't much about no one seemed to be talking about it. No one seemed to be sort of suggesting that. So I kind of went on for months hoping that it was a TMS equivalent or symptom, but not really knowing if it was. And I think, I can't remember where I heard it might have been Nicole Sachs. I think she was maybe one of the first people to come out to say, in her opinion, long COVID was TMS. And that, again, gave me a bit more hope and made me kind of sort of to view it in that way, which kind of helped. But there was still so many question marks. Like I hadn't still got to the point where I'd had my lungs tested or, you know, my heart tested or anything like that. And I needed to get those things done, because I should say actually at this point, I wasn't even able to walk 2 minutes down the road. That's how bad the breathlessness was for me.
Mm.
I was, I was sorry. So I should have said then. So it's a bit of a mixed story, but when the back pain and the neck pain went down, this is why I say I know a lot about in symptom imperative. All of the COVID symptoms came back.
Came
The
back.
the breathlessness, the shortness of breath came back just with a vengeance, and I ended up back in hospital again because it was so severe. So that was a terrifying experience, to a year on from getting the initial COVID infection to then being back in hospital with the same breathing problems, which again just made no sense to me what was happening. I didn't know if I'd been reinfected. I didn't at this point, there was so much uncertainty. But by the end of 2021, I went privately and I got my lungs tested. I had a CT scan, I'd had x-rays, I'd had lung function tests, I'd had an echocardiogram on my heart. So I started to get tests. As things opened up, I was able to get the testing done. And of course, all of it came back clear, and I'd had blood tests and all the rest of it. And it all showed no damage to my heart, no damage to my lungs. So at that point, I was kind of able to think, okay, there isn't anything wrong with me, which is just mad considering how debilitated I was by
Right.
these
Maybe
things.
just pause for a minute and everybody take this in, that at this point, all the tests were clear and you had a number of debilitating, very severe symptoms in your body that hospitalized you.
Yeah.
You're going to learn through her story that were not caused by the body. So just to know your brain can cause, as Belle knows, a gazillion symptoms in your body, straight up. So just so that sinks in for those that are doubting the power of the brain.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing what the brain can do. I've seen obviously firsthand. I'm sure many of the listeners can understand it as well. The power of what the brain can actually produce in the body is phenomenal. So yes, I sort of the end of 2021, I thought it was just a really sensible idea for me to kind of get some more help. And I did some research and sort of was looking around. And I found you, Jim, and it just felt, watched a lot of your videos, and it just made the way you conveyed things and the way that you made sense of things just really fitted with me, and it made sense to me. And I think I reached out to you the beginning of 2022. Yeah. So, this is 2 years of really, really struggling and being, incredibly debilitated, not being able to work, not being able to function in my life in any way. I had 2 small children as well. I had a 1-year-old when I got sick and a 3-year-old as well. And that was incredibly difficult. And, I think thinking about the stress of that time as well, being so unwell in lockdown, normally when you're that unwell, people rally around you, don't they? Family come in, friends come in, they support you. And my partner was working full time, trying to look after me, trying to look after our 2 children and do homeschooling. And the whole thing was just an absolute mess and chaos. And it just created so much pain, and the heartache of not being able to be the mum that I wanted to be was really, the whole thing was really, really difficult.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And then from that point, so we started in the beginning of 2022.
We did, yeah.
And maybe take us forward from there, because it was a journey. You'll see it's a journey.
It was a journey. It was definitely a journey. We started, and I still remember, I was reflecting back on this, and I still remember the first session that we had together, because I'd given you my history. I talked to you about what was going on. And I remember you just really calmly were like, yeah, I think this is what's going on. You showed me the anxietycenter.com website, and I think you showed me the symptoms for like shortness of breath, tight chest, all those things. I remember reading the sort of description of what it was like and what people tend to describe, and it was just me. It was just perfectly described exactly what was going on and how I was feeling, and especially with the breathing symptoms. And there was no other option. The medical side of things gave me no answers, and I knew at that point that I had to take a leap of faith and trust that was true. That was what was going on, that this was underlying all of this. Even though it started off with the COVID infection, my brain had somehow carried it on from the anxiety and maybe the conditioning of what I'd gone through for so long. But that's exactly what it was. It was then being driven by fear and anxiety. And it made total sense to me when you showed me that. And it was actually, I remember it was like a huge weight being lifted off my shoulders, that there was an explanation for it. That I,
But you accepted that diagnosis, or that made sense to you, where
yeah.
just for the viewers and listeners, I will say that as well. Hey, I really think that this is just anxiety. And
Mm,
some people freak out more because they're so anxious and
yeah.
they go, well, how am I supposed to get hold of my anxiety? Or they don't believe that. They don't think that's true. But you
Yeah.
took it in because it made sense to you
Yeah.
on many levels. Your tests were clear, right? And you said, this really does make sense. Now,
Yeah.
just accepting the diagnosis didn't solve the problem, right?
I wish it had. I've heard of all these amazing people that just get better from the knowledge, and unfortunately, unfortunately, that wasn't me. I had to do quite a bit of work, and because there was, what I went through with COVID was so terrifying, and I was living in complete terror for years, actually, for a couple of years at this point. So to work through that took me some time, and to trust. And actually, I think in the initial stages, I don't think I had a lot of belief in myself, but your absolute strong belief and conviction in what was going on for me, I think I almost borrowed that from you for a while while I was testing it out. And I was like, well, Jim says I'm fine, so I'm going to do it. I'm going to go for it. Um, and although the journey was up and down, even in the first month of me working with you, I'd gone from only being able to walk 5 minutes down the road to being able to walk an hour around my local lake. And that wasn't easy. That was, I was still getting the breathing symptoms. It was still terrifying, and I was scared shitless sometimes.
But you
Um,
did it. And that's highlight that again. I'm going to like little ding of a button here because I want everybody to know that you weren't symptom free while you were getting back to an hour. It's so
Absolutely
important for
not.
people to understand this.
Absolutely not. And I even remember there's a big lake near me, and that's the one I wanted to walk around. It's one of my favorite walking places to go to. And once you get round the other side, there's no access to it. So my fear was that I would stop breathing, or my breathing would get really bad, and no one would be able to get to me. No ambulance would be able to get to me. And so I had to really conquer a lot of those fears of being like in places where I wasn't going to be able to access help if I needed it, because I'd created a lot of safety behaviors around how far I was able to go, where I was able to go, making sure that people knew I was going so they could quickly get to me if I needed it. So, there's lots of things that kind of I had to work through to be able to get there and to do that. And it took me quite a bit of time to get to a point where I was walking around that lake and not even thinking that way.
Right.
Um,
So for a period of time, would you say every time you went out there and did your walks, you had a lot of fear, you had a lot of symptoms, but you just continued to walk through it, right?
yeah.
Reassuring yourself. What did you do? What is helpful so the listeners can know what did you do personally during that time? Because it was hard.
It was hard, and I think one of the things that I lent on a lot during that time, and we talked about it in an early session. You told me about the Dare book. So it's an approach to anxiety, which I think is brilliant. I think it's one of the best books out there for anxiety. And what I liked about it was one that had a whole chapter on breathing anxiety, which again reinforced to me that actually this is caused by anxiety. These breathing problems, severe breathing problems, can be caused by anxiety. So that again reinforced that to me. But it also helped me in a sense of giving me a mindset towards how to deal with the fear or with the anxiety that comes up around these symptoms. And I think that helped me so much. Like I did all the journaling and I did the somatic tracking, and those things are great. And I used them, and I still use them. But to me, the mindset piece was how I responded to symptoms, how I reacted to symptoms was the most important piece for me of my recovery, because that was the bit that I struggled with the most. I had a tendency to catastrophize, to freak out a lot, to get really concerned and worried. And it was using the DARE kind of way of approaching anxiety and the symptoms that really kind of helped me to kind of manage that or react and respond in a different way.
Yeah. And if those of you aren't familiar with DARE, DARE, you can check it out. Very,
Mm-hmm.
very good approach, very much in alignment with the work I teach and with the TMS world
It
for
is, yeah.
overcoming fear. Yeah.
Yeah. So I very much use like part of the step. It's that paradoxical intention, isn't it? And I think everything about healing, from whether it's panic attacks, anxiety, or the TMS, is counterintuitive and it's paradoxical, and you've got to do everything opposite to what you kind of naturally want to do. So that kind of idea, like I'd be walking and the breathing would come on, and it would be really tight and intense and shortness of breath, and I'd be like, come on then, take me, do what you want, like I'm not giving up on this is what I want to do, just if you're going to get worse, go for it. And that took me a while to practice that, because I
Yeah,
was
that's
generally
so important too, Belle, that what you said. It does take a practice. Some
yeah,
people say, hell no, I ain't saying that.
yeah,
But it is totally paradoxical. And
yeah,
I just did an audio for my group on this. I said, do the opposite.
yeah,
And it's truly exactly what you said, the opposite. And you said early on that you were determined. That was the word. I listened to that word. And that's a very key word, because you were like, say, I'm going to get over this. Right. And so that you need determination, and you need to have some conviction. And even if you have to borrow it from me
yeah,
or somebody, and to get to that point where you say, go ahead, do whatever you want,
yeah,
that shows a lot of confidence in yourself, even if you're scared internally, right?
yeah,
You're still approaching the symptoms that way.
yeah. And as I said, it took a lot of practice. There's times where I would turn around, where I get so intense and I'd be like, and I'd try it, and then I'd be like, I only got so far, and I'd have to come back. um and it just got easier, and then more I just got more and more fed up. And I think you have to find, excuse my French, like your fuck it kind of moment, where you're like, I'm done with this, I'm done with living like this, I've had enough.
Yeah.
um I'm fed up of you taking control of my life. I've got stuff I want to do. This, I want, we only get one life, I want to live it. And I think that energy of, that empowered energy of, and anger as well, like you always said to me, get angry, don't be frightened. It's like that's a healthier place to come from anger than it is to be in a frightened, fearful place. And that helped me definitely, because that gave me, the anger gave me motivation to keep moving forward, rather than just collapsing and getting really, fearful and frightened and withdrawing. So
Yeah.
tapping into the anger was really helpful.
Yeah, that's important for those of you listening, that studies show that anger is healthier than fear. It's not that we want to be angry, but when we're in high level fear, we need to have, like those words you use, being powered, being fed up, being tired of this stuff. Say, let's go, come on, I want to live my life. You have to have that more than you have the fear. And if you think about fear, all the words that people use to overcome fear, from the researchers to famous people, say you got to face the fear, right? You got to confront it, you got to challenge it, you got to move through it. So you started to embody that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, and I kind of used a little affirmation, I don't know, but like saying I was safe made me feel more unsafe. Like my
yeah,
body is safe, I am safe. I don't know why, but it just did. But having a saying of like, I'm going to reclaim my life, I'm reclaiming my life, that just gave me that sort of burst of energy of, yeah, I can do this. And just having something sometimes that gives you that stance towards it. And for me, it was just like, I'm reclaiming my life, and there's just no questions, I'm just doing it.
there you go.
um
No question. See, you're determined, you're decisive. That's called facing state. So when you get in this facing state, you're going to face this thing straight up, right? And when you get into that mode, you can do anything. And
mm,
that's what you proved. Now again, we'll go through the whole story. It wasn't like you did this one time and so, well, that's it, it's over with.
no, and I think, yeah, so we started working, I think February, and by April I got a big extinction burst. I got post-exertion malaise back, and sometimes I could barely even stand for a couple of weeks. I felt so unwell, and it was so strong, and I hadn't had that symptom for quite some time. And I think it was because I was just confronting, I was facing, I was moving forward, and then I just got knocked. Really big setback. And I kind of, like we talked about it, I kind of knew these things happen, it's part of the course. And to keep my mindset still in a good place, that was again the hardest bit. But I knew I could come back from it, and I knew that if I came back from it, then it would just make me stronger, and make my mindset stronger towards. I'd always had a goal in my mind that I was going to do this success story with you, and I was going to get there. And I was just, as I say, determined. And so
That's it. I can predict it almost with 100% accuracy for you guys listening. Who people, when they talk this way, hey, I want to be a success story. Like, great, you're going to be. I'm
yeah,
determined to get back, because you're talking from a whole different space than you are from fear.
yeah. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and I think I had quite a few bumps along the way as I was working with you. I got COVID again in the June. I remember we had it at the same time actually, and having going through that experience again of getting COVID after the first time after what I went through previous was terrifying. But I came through it, and it only took me just over a week to get over it and feel fully better. And I remember you just telling me, just keep reassuring your brain, keep, that you're going to get there, you're going to be okay. And it was, and that gave me a lot of faith back in my body that I can get this infection again, and I can get through it this time, and it's not going to be the disaster that it was the
Yeah.
first time round. Yeah, and then unfortunately, a couple of months later, I found a lump in my breast, and obviously I went to the doctor, and they said, yeah, we're going to have to do an urgent referral. And at that point, that really hit me hard. Like I was so close to recover. I felt like I was so close to recovery at that point that we were almost, I felt like coming to the end of our work, and getting that happen at that point. I did go down at that point, and I did fall a bit more into a victim mentality and think, oh my God, why now? Why me? And the anxiety just shot through the roof, having to wait for those test results and go through that. And luckily it was benign and it was fine. But very soon after that, I got some very strange sensations in my legs. And obviously I can reflect on that now and see it was just like I guess, an outlet from all the anxiety and the stress that I went through for the 2-3
Oh,
weeks.
coming out of your body. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I got to the point where my legs went really, really stiff, where I couldn't almost, and heavy, that I was really struggling to just kind of walk. And that was terrifying. And then alongside that also I had experience where I was like struggling to kind of lift my foot up.
Yeah. So just tell people, this is again the power of the brain. You really couldn't really lift. It felt weak, right? Almost as if you had
Really
a
weak.
foot
Yeah.
drop or something.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So and that was confusing. I was either getting the stiffness or the foot drop, or the kind of feeling that I couldn't lift my foot. And that was a really challenging thing to go through. I'd never experienced anything like that. And it was just a whole new symptom that was just so
Just to
unfamiliar.
scare you, right? Because the other stuff you had gotten through, I'm like, well, I'll give her a foot job. That'll really
Yeah,
scare her for a while.
that'll get her
That'll put her
attention.
in place. So I can take a break for a month or two because she'll be worrying about that for a while.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah, and again like I knew you knew that it was TMS. I was like 98% sure it was TMS because I could see it fluctuate. Like I kept an evidence sheet and I could see how it was fluctuating. And I'd be walking for 20 minutes and then it would completely disappear for the next 20 minutes. And I could see all the variations. So I knew it was TMS, but I did get tested. I did have some nerve conduction tests and an MRI, and of course it all came back clear.
But didn't one of the doctors early on scare you more by saying they thought it was peripheral neuropathy? You had
Oh
neuropathy?
yes, yeah. I spoke to a neurologist on the phone for an initial assessment, and that's what he came out with. Yeah, it was like peripheral neuropathy, which is quite a scary thing to kind of be told. So that was, I forgot about that. But yeah. So it kind of all added to the fear of what was happening. So yeah, and then I came through. That took a little while to go away, but I don't have any of those problems anymore. That's completely all gone. So yeah, and it was just using the same processes as I had before, really, of the kind of the mindset stuff. And I did quite a bit of somatic tracking. I don't tend to do that much journaling, but it was more the mindset stuff for me. That was the piece that I really needed to work on.
Yeah. So you're highlighting the fear, the anxiety was the main emotion that you needed to work with to get over. And like I said, it moved around your body. In fact, I think after the legs, didn't it go somewhere else? Did it go to your arms or something for a little bit? I think.
Yeah, I had some weakness down the arm as well. Yeah, and that's all gone now. And that was scary because I actually got to a point where I was struggling to kind of lift a cup up or type or anything. So it's just, again, like what we said at the beginning, just what the power of what the brain can do and produce in the body just no longer surprises me at all. Because I've just had about everything, really, just experienced most things.
You had so many symptoms, and so went to your arms, and then I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, you started running, right? You wanted to get back to doing more, and then
Yeah.
the shortness of breath came back a little bit too, right? Because were challenging it at a higher level.
Yeah, so I started to get back to doing what I really wanted to get back to was some weightlifting because that's what I used to do before. And every time I'd start trying, I wanted to get back to doing it at least 3 times a week. And I remember I'd try and do it the first time, and then my legs would either go weak or stiffen up, or I'd get pain somewhere. And I remember that sometimes, a lot of the time, that would put me off from trying because I was scared, of having a reaction from trying to do weights. But I just kept on trying. I kept going back and back. And it took me a long time. There was many times where I could only do one a week, and then I might have to skip a week, and then I tried to move it to twice a week, and then I'd have to go back to one a week because of the reactions I was getting. It was a really long, drawn out process. But again, it was just the determination of this is what I want to do. I want to get back to doing weights. I want to get back to biking and running and walking and all those sorts of things, and just kept on going. And I'm doing weights 3 times a week now, and I don't get any reaction in my legs. My legs
Isn't
don't
that
stiffen.
amazing? So just again to highlight to people, because I get this question all the time, Jim, this approach isn't working for me. I still having these crazy symptoms. I'm trying to go back to XYZ. And I always say, keep going.
Yeah, yeah,
You're not going long enough yet. And not only keep going, you have, like you said, that mental state has to be strong. You were determined. You, as bad as it was, you said, I'm going to keep going back, keep going back. And
yeah.
that was a highlight of another success story I did recently, is that the determination and the consistency over a period of time. How long did it take you again with that gym to get back to not having symptoms?
I reckon it took about 2 to 3 months
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
persistently keep on going back, and lots of ups and downs with it working and not working, and just
Yeah.
back and
And you didn't give up, because a lot of people, what happens is they give up, they pull all the way back. Like you pull back a little bit and kind of paused, just
yeah.
recollect, right, and then move forward again. So I think that's really key for people to hear.
Yeah, and I think that's one thing that I remember you saying to me, and that really stuck with me, is pause, don't stop. And I think in the early stages of when we were working together, if something did come up or got really intense, I'd just stop. I'd stop everything and get really down on myself and really anxious again, and just start catastrophizing. And that's that whole spiral sort of set off. And it's just getting to a point where I was able to kind of see, actually that doesn't get me anywhere, and actually it just takes me longer to get back. And it is pausing, it's sort of taking stock of what's going on, recognizing what's going on, seeing it for what it is, and having that determination to go, no, you're not stopping me, I'm going to keep
Yeah.
going, I'm going to keep moving forward.
Right. And in those pausing moments, that's when you did some somatic tracking. You did a lot
Yeah,
of soothing and calming. Yep.
yeah, exactly that. Yeah, somatic tracking, maybe a bit journaling, just soothing myself, but also like saying tomorrow I'm getting up and doing it again.
Yeah, that's it. That's the key. I think hopefully all you're getting this message from what Belle's saying and what the previous success story said, that look, I have it. It's in my diary. It's ready to go. This is what we're doing. There
Yeah,
wasn't a hesitation, which is another word for that is doubt. In other words, you didn't let the fear get so strong that it was going to stop you,
yeah,
right? You were determined.
yeah, yeah. And I think it's just that decision again. It is that, you know no, this is my life, I'm not letting you take control, I'm taking back control now. And I think that's a really powerful message to kind of stick by, is that idea that you are in control of this. You can move through these difficult things, and there will be lots of ups and downs and setbacks, and it's really picking yourself up and dusting yourself off. And sometimes that's really hard, and sometimes, yeah, you do need to take a little bit of a pause and just relax and soothe and do something enjoyable and just watch some trashy TV, or just, but then it's knowing that tomorrow I'm going to get back up and I'm going to keep moving forward, because it's my life and that's what I want.
Yeah.
It's attitude. Yeah,
It's amazing because like your story with all these different setbacks, not just the same symptom, you get over one, and then like I'd talk to you again and say, "How you doing?" Oh, you won't believe it. I got, another one is coming. We're like, man, this is keeps coming at you, but you didn't give up. And I think that's so important to understand. You had like how many different symptoms did you have that tried to scare you to stop in
yeah,
a way, right?
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I did calculate it at one point. I think it was well over 25 different symptoms. So It was a lot.
It
It was
was a lot.
a
Yeah.
lot.
And so that last bit of you getting back to the gym, getting back to running, doing more. I remember taking trips with the family, right? Taking
Yeah,
some holiday trips was a big deal
yeah.
too.
That was a huge, yeah, that was terrifying to me, going away with the family. And again, it's just like leaving your comfort zone. You create a little, when you're ill and you're ill for so long, you create this little, universe, almost like this little comfort zone, and just leaving that and stepping out of it is can feel so scary and so intimidating. And it's a lot of facing and confronting. I'd say that was that, if there were the two words that I could say was my journey with you and doing all this, it was facing fear and confronting. It was just but that's what you need to do. You need to be able to kind of keep facing fear and moving forward and doing it in spite of how you feel sometimes.
Yeah,
I think
because the
that
fear, the
action steps.
anxiety was that's what was creating the symptoms in the first place.
Yeah,
So you're overcoming your symptoms, but really what you're overcoming is the anxiety and fear.
yeah. And I think the behavioral piece for me was really important, like just doing things. Like that was what I needed to do. I needed to get back to exercising, going for those walks. Like, I'm kind of okay with the emotional side of things, and the feeling my emotions and doing that. It was the behavioral stuff for me that was really difficult. That's where the most fear was getting back into my life. But that's where I've had the most success. The more I do and the more I enjoy my life and the more I put myself out there and do all the things that I want to do, that's when I notice that the symptoms aren't there. That's when I notice that they go down. And that's where I had the biggest success, is just getting back into my life again.
Yeah, that's the paradox here, everybody, is that the purpose of fear is to make you avoid everything and pull back because there's danger and safety. But remember, this is anxiety, not
Yeah.
real fear. But we can see how this manifested from that COVID that really kicked this thing off. And if you go back, maybe just share a little bit about your previous life history, that maybe what shaped this reaction to be so strong around the COVID.
Yeah, so I had a medical trauma when I was around about 13, and that was really scary. So it was to do with my eyesight, and I lost quite a bit of my eyesight and my central vision, and that was a genetic condition. And that was a really challenging thing to go through as a teenager. And I don't think I really had the support at the time to help me deal with the emotional aspect of that, and the grief and the fear of going through that was never really addressed or supported. So that manifested into an eating disorder. And it was just, looking back on it now, it was just a way of numbing the big feelings that I just didn't feel like I could handle when I was a teenager with what I was going through. So yeah, I struggled with an eating disorder for many, many years. And I almost died from it when I was 18. I was in intensive care for 4 months.
Mm.
So, there was a history of trauma there, definitely, of not being able to feel the feelings or not being able to process the trauma that I went through. Um, and that obviously manifested in the eating disorder. And actually, I'd recovered from the eating disorder really, really well, but I still knew that my relationship with food wasn't where I wanted to be when I was in my early 30s. And so I did an intuitive eating model, and I recommend that to anyone that has difficulties with eating or disordered eating, because it's brilliant. It really is a brilliant model for recovery. And it was when I was at the final stages of sort of finishing off that work that actually was when I got long COVID.
Isn't it
Um,
interesting? Maybe another,
Interesting.
maybe this is a
It's like another,
long symptom imperative, right? Over a
oh,
long,
very long. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. So, it's interesting when you look back and you sort of see, you see the connections and you see how it came to be, really. So yeah, there's definitely a big connection there.
yeah, yeah. It's very interesting when you go back and you look at the deeper threads or the root to this, going
Yeah.
back further and further. And I kind of want to swing around to the empowerment piece again, because we talked about that just not only with dealing with the fear, but about your life too, right? About stepping up, speaking up, being more empowered. Maybe speak to that a little bit, how that applied to you.
Yeah, it's a good point, actually. I think, again, we focus so much on the kind of the techniques and the tools of what do we need to do. I was certainly like that. I was like, tell me what I'll do, tell me what I need to do, journal, somatic track, brilliant, I'll do it all, I'll do it perfectly. But that's part of the problem, isn't it? And I think one thing, I think trauma, going through trauma, gives us as children, as adults, is we learn it kind of gives us coping mechanisms going through trauma that I think, like the people pleasing, the perfectionism, that ultimately is what kind of, again, can create and manifest a lot of these symptoms as well. It's a way of dealing with what we've been through. You know, we learn to people please, we learn to adapt to our environment, don't we? And I think, yeah, working, there's lots of things I had to do. I had to speak up to certain members of my family. I had to articulate be more assertive, definitely. That was a big piece for me. I really struggled with that. I wasn't so bad within my family. I've got quite a good relationship with certain members of my family, but it was more with people outside. I really struggled with being assertive sort of outside of my family unit, with just friends or colleagues, or, you know, that was where I kind of struggled, because I had a big people pleasing problem. So yeah, there's lots of other things I had to work on. The perfectionism, I had to really learn how to kind of tame that a bit more, and focus on progress rather than perfectionism. You know, there's lots of different things, learning to say no, and the assertiveness piece. It was so many other different aspects that I really had to kind of step back and really think about as well, in terms of how I was relating to people and myself, and what other pressures were creating the symptoms and the sensations as well, or keeping them going, or at least fueling them.
Yeah. Yeah. We talked about that. So you did like a, multi-pronged approach in addition to facing the fear. You worked a little bit on these other things, and you were doing a lot of that work on your own with the feelings and so forth. And I still remember one story that you said. Remember, it was one time you had gone, I think it was to the park or something, and you were talking to a friend, and we had seen that connection where it happened with some of the emotions coming up, right? But I think somebody had said something and you didn't say something,
Yeah.
and swallowed it, and the symptoms went up.
Yeah.
So that kind of highlighted some of these emotions as well.
Definitely. Like, yeah, it was someone that I'd met years down the line, and I hadn't seen them for a very long time, and they'd taken advantage of the friendship, and it brought up a lot of very difficult feelings, and I didn't express it. I just went straight into people pleaser mode. So, oh, hi, it's nice to see you. And I was thinking, I hate you. You're awful.
I want to kill you.
Like, why am I doing?
But
Yeah.
how's it going?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And you're like, and that was kind of like, yeah, I need to work on that. Like, because I need to, we weren't friends. There's nothing there. Like, why am I doing that? Why am I putting that effort in? It's those kind of things. And you're right, it did bring up symptoms. And so those are things that I still have to work on now. Absolutely, and I think that's just a lifelong process as well, of catching yourself doing that, and trying to do things a bit differently.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you are, and that's helping you as well. But that fear, like you can see all these emotions can cause symptoms, physical symptoms. And what we're highlighting for you is that fear slashing really anxiety, man, did it light up your body with a whole host of symptoms that I want people to take in again, that was all just anxiety. Everything that Belle's mentioned today, severe symptoms that put her in a hospital, to crazy stuff that seems so physical, so real.
Yeah.
Right. They were real symptoms. They weren't fake. They weren't just in your head. They were very real.
Yeah.
But the cause was coming from anxiety.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that anxietycenter.com actually website is really helpful, actually, because I remember just after I found out I was okay from the cancer scare, I remember sitting and watching my son. He was leaving school, and I was watching the recital, and it was just my vision was like this heat wave thing going on in the corner of my vision. It was terrifying. I was like, what the hell is that? Am I having a stroke? And I remember going onto that website, and I saw this like example of, this heat wave type thing is a normal symptom of anxiety. And I was just like, okay, that's fine. And it literally went. And I just think sometimes it's really helpful as a resource to kind of go, is this a common symptom of anxiety? And if it is, then I just watch it for a little while, and then obviously, when you relax and you kind of think that's what it is, it goes away often.
It goes away. Yeah. And I think that's why I really want to highlight that, because I think anxiety is one of the biggest causes of TMS symptoms, and people don't believe it, recognize it. Doctors don't know it, and it gets misdiagnosed. I just today was on the anxietycenter.com website with a client. So it's just how commonly I have to do it. And she had what appeared to be what she thought was a TIA, right? A little mini
Yeah.
stroke because she couldn't, and it turns out it wasn't. And even the doctor said, this could be anxiety. And
Yeah.
she goes, oh yeah, yeah, you gotta get anxious all the time. So it can cause these severe symptoms. Now, yeah, we want to get them checked out, of course, right? But if you're prone to them, there's usually a good chance that that's what it is, unless something else is causing it.
Absolutely. Yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome, Belle. That's so cool. So maybe share, is there anything else you want to share that was helpful on your journey? I think you hit a lot of the highlights. Is there anything else that you want to share with the audience?
I think, for me, I needed one-on-one support. And I know that's maybe some privilege in that, but I think that really helped me. That moved me along a lot. And I think, it's a lonely place to be sometimes. And in not many people understand this and understand what you're going through, especially when you're found this approach and it's so still not mainstream, unfortunately. And I think working with someone that gets it and understands it and can support you, and just having that safe space to go and talk about it and get that support and have someone believe in you and believe in your recovery, I think is really powerful. And I think
Yeah,
that really helped me.
absolutely. Because we worked for, how long do we work? Just so people know, it wasn't like we worked for a month or even 2 months.
So we started in February and we had our last session at the beginning of May.
The
So yeah,
following
over.
year. So it was over a year. Just let people know that, because I like to put that out there because it does not always a quick recovery. We all want that, but a lot of the people I see and work with, again, it's not quick recoveries, but the idea is you keep going, and you have that support. And I want to finish up with what you're doing now, because I want to highlight your work now. And
Yeah.
and that last piece of the puzzle that was a hurdle, like of getting into this work. So maybe share how that came about and what you're doing now.
Yeah, so I'm actually a clinical psychologist. And interestingly enough, before I got COVID, I just started a job working in pain management. So I was working with patients with chronic pain, but in a very medicalized way. And this approach was not on my radar at all. So actually, when I went through the chronic pain and I found about the mind body approach, I really struggled to go back into that system, knowing what I know. It just felt very unethical to me. So I decided to go off on my own and set up my own private practice, which is what I've been working on for the last few months. Yeah, and I'm just finishing off my website and setting up. So that's where I'm at now, and it's feels really great and empowering to kind of be doing my own thing and doing something that I really believe in as well. And I think so many people say this, but when you've gone through something like this yourself and you know the power of it and how it can transform people's lives, it's transformed my life. You can't not do it, and especially given the career that I'm in as well. I'm doing. It's just like I can't not do this. It's become a passion now for me to kind of pass this forward and support other people through it.
Yeah, and we'll go ahead once you have that website done, and I can link it to the YouTube so people can check you out if they're interested in learning more about you, because your story is amazing. Like I always say to everybody, when you live it and you've experienced it and you've gotten through it, it's better than any kind of training you could have done in school.
Oh God, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Like I look back on my training and we had some lectures on unexplained symptoms, and it really it was really poor. It wasn't great at all. And I think, learning what I've learned now and what I've gone through personally has given me much, much more than my training could have ever given me. So it's a privilege in that sense.
Yeah, and it's a privilege that you to come out. It's almost like a greater good has come out of this, or a silver lining is that now you're moving into an area you're passionate about, and you're already working in a field of right pain as a psychologist. But even there, you weren't doing the same stuff that we did here, right? It's even there, it's
Absolutely
not
not.
working in the same way.
Nowhere, yeah, nowhere near what we were doing. Nothing like it. So yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, it's really amazing. So I'm really excited to see where you're going, and that you're going to be out there helping other people as well with these conditions, because we need more and more people doing it. There's a ton of people out there that are suffering.
yeah.
Any last words of wisdom for people that are struggling, that are having a difficult time, not sure what to do, or having a
I
hard
think
time?
the most important thing that I did that really moved me forward is kind of what I said before. I reached out for help. And that's just what I needed to do. I needed to be supported by someone like you. I needed you to tell me that this is what it was. I needed you to believe in me and believe in my recovery. And that was the most powerful thing for me. That's what moved me on more than anything. And I think, sometimes we all need support in this area. And I think, for me personally, it was, I needed your support, Jim. I need that helped me more than anything. So you were fantastic. And I can't thank you enough for all the support you gave me.
Yeah, thank you. It's always an honor to help people. And that's why I love this work. And, I get people telling me off air emails, and I don't even know who these people are. So it's just it comes back so strongly to me. So I appreciate you and your dedication to this and your determination. That's the word. And your ability to just keep going, even in its darkest moments,
Yeah.
not to give up on the process and see it through to the finish line. And like you said, there's always stuff to work on. So I'm still working on stuff too. And as Nicole Sachs says, it's a human condition, so it can strike at any time,
Yeah.
right? Even
And
if
that's
we
the other
know.
thing, I guess, is normalizing that we're all going to have sensations. I think when I was first doing this work, I thought the pinnacle of recovery was never to feel any sensations ever again. And that's just not true. I don't get chronic sensations now, but I still get sensations every so often, and they come and they go. And
That's right.
that's normal. And I think that took me to realize that actually it's not about complete no sensations ever. It's about, you will get things. We have bodies, they do weird things sometimes. And
Right. We have emotions,
yeah,
and emotions
exactly.
show up in our bodies as symptoms. So of course, yeah, I think that's really important to highlight, that it's not like, oh my God, I'm just completely free. I never had a sensation since then.
Yeah, exactly that. Yeah,
Yeah. It's about the chronic ones. Exactly.
it is definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome, Belle. Well, thank you so much again for sharing your story and being courageous to come on here and share it. It helps so many people. It really does. I'm trying to do more of these. So you're just a great example of this work, and now going on to help other people recover. So I'm so proud of you and what you've done.
Thanks, Jim.
Okay, we'll see you next time.
See you later.
Okay, bye.